You are a danger, Raymond. That mine is a frozen grave. Leave now before you curse us all with your stubbornness.
Salt rat! You'll freeze down there, and good riddance to a fool.
The crowd echoed her. Salt rat. Until the words rattled off the storefronts. Warm is where the wind can't find you. He turned away, his dog falling into step beside him as snow began to dust the boardwalk. They've never breathed air that doesn't move. They don't understand what holds still underground. Slinging his pack, he took the old trace road toward the mountain, the town's lights growing small and cold behind. One by one, doors shut. Shutters were barred. By the time the first gust struck, the valley had sealed him out ahead. The mine entrance yawned black beneath a crust of salt and snow, timbers leaning, darkness promising shelter or a tomb. He walked toward it, the dog already smelling the dry stone, and the jeers died under the rising wind. He slipped inside, the dog pressing against his leg, and struck his flint until the lantern caught. The shaft dropped steeply. Timbers cracked and salt glittered, but his feet found the old miner's steps without hesitation. 30 years since anyone mined this salt. 30 years the air sat still, waiting. The dog stopped once, a low whine, then pressed on when he touched her head. They passed a side drift where old picks still lay. Then the shaft opened into a gallery vast and white, bone dry. No drip, no frost. The salt has sucked the moisture out of the air for centuries. He pulled a scrap of red cloth from his pocket and tied it to a timber, the first human marker in a generation. Trip by trip, he hauled his sacks and hides inside, his breath never once misting before him. No wind, no frost, no rot. This is where winter lets you live. By the time the last load was stacked, the storm outside had sealed the entrance with a white wall, but inside, the air stood still as stone. He chose the narrowest span and stretched a hide curtain across, pegging it into the salt with a miner's pick. Doesn't need to hold back a storm, just needs to stop the air from wandering. The brazier went next, a small iron bowl. When the first flame caught, the white walls drank the light without a flicker. The dog circled twice on a folded blanket and settled with a sigh, her nose toward the warmth. Dry heat, no backdraft. The salt doesn't weep the way rock does. Nothing here wants to rot. He arranged his supplies on a natural salt ledge, dried meat, beans, a skin of water, all untouched by frost, lips already cracking. This air eats moisture, but it won't let the cold settle in the bones. Outside, the storm pressed against the mountain, but inside, the lantern flame stood straight as a soldier. He carved a niche for a simple thermometer, a glass tube that would tell the truth about this underground air. Then he sat against the salt wall, the dog's head heavy on his knee, and the gallery felt less like a tomb and more like a room. That first night, Raymond didn't sleep. The brazier cast a low orange glow, and above the stone, the wind screamed like a thing denied. An old miner once told me, salt preserves whatever it holds, meat, wood, even the dead. He lay still, listening for the drip of melting snow that never came, the creak of frost that never formed. They called me Salt Rat, but rats burrow where it's safe. They know where the cold can't reach. By morning, the brazier had burnt low, but his blankets were dry, and the dog stirred without shivering. He ran his hands over the dried meat, the beans, the leather of his boots. No frost, no rot. The salt is doing its work, drawing every drop of water out of the air so nothing can freeze inside the fibers. He slid a glass thermometer into its salt niche and watched the lines settle at a steady, underground chill, cold but never killing. The mine had become a sealed pocket, a world where winter's teeth couldn't bite. And as the storm buried the surface deeper, Raymond knelt to add fuel to the brazier, his face calm, the dog thumping her tail once. 5 miles away, the mining town lay half swallowed under a snowpack that had not relented in days. Nothing moved but the drifting white.
We're down to the last cord of wood. If this storm doesn't break, We'll be burning furniture by week's end.
I saw smoke this morning from the old ventilation shaft on the ridge, thin and gray, but there.
Smoke in a blizzard. Your eyes freeze, Marge. That mine's been dead 30 years. Nothing alive down there.
That smoke, though, something down there still breathes.
200 feet below the ridge, Raymond sat with his back against a salt pillar, drawing waxed thread through a cracked boot. A man could winter here for years and never see a single drop of water. The mine keeps everything. Inside the store, the townspeople huddled closer to the stove, their whispers fraying into argument.
Enough. The salt rat is dead. We survive by what we have, not by hoping on a fool's luck.
In the salt gallery, the dog slept, and Raymond kept sewing, the brazier glowing without a tremor, while a whole town froze above him. On the third day, Raymond took his lantern deeper, following a drift where the walls were pure vein white, untouched by any damp. This salt hasn't seen water since it was laid down 1,000,000 years ago. The air tastes like old stone and nothing else. He scraped loose crystals from the wall into a sack, then packed them around his dried fish and jerky, like a winter cook salting a barrel. The salt draws the last moisture from the meat. No rot, no mold. It's like a larder built into a desert. By the end of the day, he had hung a second hide curtain across a side alcove, giving himself a storeroom where the air never stirred. The dog padded between the two rooms, tail wagging slowly, choosing her favorite spot on an old blanket without a shiver. 30 feet of mountain above me, and the temperature hasn't budged. The earth itself is a blanket down here. While the town above burned its last chairs and watched frost devour the window panes, Raymond unbuttoned his coat. Fool's luck, they said. But luck doesn't hold at 50 degrees, when the world outside hits 30 below. The mine hummed its ancient stillness, and Raymond slept without dreams, the dog a warm weight at his feet. Before dawn, a blizzard fell on the town like a collapsing roof, shattering windows and burying streets under a wall of white.
Drag what you can to the store. We need bodies together, not scattered in frozen rooms. Move.
The little ones are already blue, Alden. If we don't find more heat, they won't see morning.
200 feet below, Raymond stirred as a deep roar vibrated through the stone, like a freight train buried in the mountain. That's not just wind. The whole mountain is shaking, but the curtains aren't moving. He added another block of fuel to the brazier, and the flame rose without so much as a bend. He sat back, opened an old journal, and read by the steady firelight, his dog twitching in a dream.
Half the roof is gone on the east side. Women and children in there. Someone help me dig.
Above, the wind carved ice through every crack. Below, the thermometer needle hadn't shifted a single degree. In the still pocket of the salt gallery, the storm that was killing the valley was no more than a distant thunder. The general store was a press of bodies and dying heat. The stove coughed its last smoke, and every face in that room knew morning was not promised. A voice near the broken window whispered the old salt mine, how the air used to be dry down there, 10 degrees warmer than any shack.
That mine's a death trap. The timbers are rotted, the shafts are choked. You'd die before you found the bottom.
The salt rat's probably laughing at us from hell right now.
Raymond always said salt keeps things dry. He said a man could winter an army in there. He knew.
Raymond was a fool, and you'll be a dead fool if you try to reach that mountain. Sit down.
Raymond said salt keeps the wet out. No wet, no frost. He knew something we didn't.
When a lull came, he slipped out the back, a rope coiled over his shoulder, while Alden was bent over the dying stove. By the time they noticed, he was already a dark shape against the white, leaning into a wind that wanted to peel him from the earth. He had no map, only a memory of a ventilation shaft, and a mad hope that somewhere beneath this now, warm stones still breathed. The dog lifted her head, a long whine slipping through her teeth. Something was moving in the deep dark. Raymond put down his journal, crossed to the curtain, and listened into the shaft. Nothing but stone silence, just the mountain settling. Old tunnels shift, but his hand stayed on the hide. Later, near the fire, A cry threaded through the wind, thin, human-shaped, then swallowed by the storm.
Wind plays tricks, gives ghosts a voice, but his spine wouldn't ease.
He coiled a rope by the entrance and filled a spare lantern. Old trail habit, ready to haul, just in case. 200 feet above, Tom crawled through waist-deep powder, coat frozen stiff. The mine entrance still a distant hope. He had no feet left, just stumps of cold, but the memory of gray smoke pulled him up the next slope.
Got to be close. The shaft, the dry air. Raymond said it would be warm.
In the gallery, Raymond sat motionless, dog's head heavy on his knee. The silence, now a question. Tom's half-frozen eyes caught the dark slash of the mine entrance through the white, and he pitched forward, legs giving way. He slammed into the first timber and slid into the black, snow spilling over him like a closing grave. The dog's bark cut the deep silence, sharp and urgent, and Raymond was already moving, lamp swinging in his fist. He found the boy crumpled beyond the entrance, half buried in wind-driven drift, a rope still tangled in one blue, claw-like hand.
A face from the town. Young, desperate, the same look I wore when they cast me out.
He grabbed the boy under the arms and dragged him past the curtain into the lantern light, the dog pressing close behind. The salt walls glittered around them as he laid Tom near the brazier, the frost already melting from the boy's lashes.
This place was meant for one. Now the world has crawled in.
He crouched, watching the boy's chest hitch, while the dog whined and nudged a frozen hand. Outside, the storm screamed on. Inside, Raymond didn't move. The decision lay before him like an unlit fuse. Raymond tore strips from an old blanket, wrapping the boy's hands, then spooned warm broth through blue lips. Tom's eyelids fluttered, his voice a cracked whisper. Cold, so cold. The dog licked his swelling fingers.
This place, it's not cold. How is it not cold?
He looked around, seeing the dry white walls, the straight burning flame, the dog curled on a dry blanket.
You were right, Raymond. You were right. This mine stays warm. Alden said you were dead. Marge said you'd freeze. But they're the ones freezing.
It's not warm. It's still. Wind can't steal heat here. Salt drinks the wet, so frost never forms.
The town store collapsed under the snow. Alden's got no wood left. Marge's hands are black. They're dying. Raymond.
Raymond's face didn't change, but something behind his eyes tightened. A memory of the jeering crowd, now frozen in his mind.
Will you help them? I came because I remembered you saying salt could save us. Please.
The dog whimpered, and Raymond turned to stare at the hide curtain, the weight of 36 lives pressing against the dark. He paced the salt gallery, the dog's eyes tracking his every step, while the memory of a jeering crowd sat like a cold stone in his gut.
Salt doesn't care who it preserves. It just does the work. No sense letting a whole room of dry air go to waste.
Raymond, please, I never called you anything. I believed you knew something. Let me help you bring them in.
They'll have to swallow their pride. I won't pretend the past didn't happen, but I'll open the door.
He grabbed his coat, the leather stiff with salt, and the dog stood, tail rigid, sensing the shift from shelter to storm.
We go when the wind drops. You are not strong enough to haul, but you'll be the proof they need to believe.
I'll make sure. They'll see you are not just alive. You are right.
Raymond began rolling blankets and stuffing dried meat into a sack. His movements tight with old anger but steady. He coiled a second rope, then checked the brazier one last time, the dog pawing at the curtain as if to hurry him. The shaft beyond the curtain yawned black and cold, but behind him the still pocket of dry warmth held its breath, waiting for his return. They pushed through the curtain, and the blizzard swallowed them whole, a white fist of wind and ice that stole every sound but its own roar. The dog plunged forward, chest deep, breaking a path through the drift while the rope tightened between them. Raymond leaned into the wind, counting the faint slopes he'd memorized on the way in, the dog's darker shape his only compass.
Can't feel my feet.
Raymond tugged the rope without turning back. his voice a thin blade against the storm. "Keep the line tight. The dog knows the way." They inched across what had been a road, now a featureless white plain, stopping every few yards to shout into the maelstrom. Then, through a lull, a pale orange dot glimmered ahead. A candle or dying stove behind a snow-caked window. They stumbled toward it, the dog already circling a shack half buried under a wave of white, its roof groaning. Raymond beat his fist against the door, the sound swallowed almost at once, but he pounded again and again. From within, a weak shuffle answered, then nothing. The door held, but the faint light did not go out. Raymond threw his shoulder against the door until frozen hinges sheared and the plank swung inward, spilling weak candlelight into the white. Inside, Alden and Marge pressed against the far wall with 3 others, their faces hollow, breaths shallow white puffs, barely visible.
You, alive?
The mine is warm and dry. I can take you there. Follow the dog, or don't.
Is this some trick? Salt rat?
Raymond didn't answer. He turned his back to the candle and stepped into the blizzard, the dog already pressing forward.
We'll die here or out there. At least his dog knows the way.
One by one, the shivering figures pulled themselves into the storm, Tom's voice a thin, urging thread in the wind. Raymond tied the group on a single rope, the dog already breaking trail, and they lurched into the maelstrom behind the man they had cast out. No one spoke. Only the wind screamed, and the salt rat led them into the dark. The trek back was pure torment. Wind that cut through wool like a knife and a rope that never went slack because no one dared fall behind. Marge pitched forward into a drift, and Raymond hauled her up by the arm without breaking stride, her frost-bitten fingers fumbling for the rope. Alden's breath came in wet, ragged pulls, but he stayed at the rear, pushing the others when the snow tried to swallow them. Tom's knees buckled again. The dog circled back, nipping at his heels until the boy lurched forward with a sob.
Vent shafts glow. Keep the red cloth in mind. 20 more yards.
Then the black slash of the mine mouth cut the white, and the dog vanished into it with a sharp bark. They stumbled over the threshold, and the change hit them like a physical blow. The wind died, and the air turned from liquid ice to something still. The dog shook snow from her coat, and Raymond caught Marge before she collapsed, easing her against a salt-rimed timber. Then stood bent double, hands on his knees, sucking in lungfuls of the dry, preserving air that no longer burned. For the first time since the blizzard began, not one of them shivered. Raymond led them past the curtain into the main gallery, where the brazier still glowed and the salt walls reflected a steady, impossible warmth. Alden sank onto a salt block, head in his hands, while Marge cradled her thawing fingers and Tom stared at the dry pallets and the quiet order of it all.
My hands don't hurt. The cold's still there, but the burn is gone. How?
Raymond moved among them without a word, draping blankets over shoulders, pressing cups of warm broth into cupped, aching hands.
I told you all. He built this, a whole house in the salt, with curtains and fires and food not spoiled.
You built all this alone. No one helped. Not a soul believed you. And still you made a place that would save us.
Raymond nodded once, jaw tight, then knelt to add fuel to the brazier. The dog settled at his feet and gave her tail a single thump. The storm howled above, but in the salt pocket, the sound was only a faint rumble, like thunder beyond a closed window.
We drove you out into the snow like a stray dog, and you still came back for us.
You are not the first to freeze. Won't be the last. Salt doesn't care who it preserves. It just keeps the air still and dry.
The hours stacked like cordwood. Raymond moved among the sleeping bodies, checking bandages feeding the brazier, the dog a silent shadow at his heel. Marge's blackened fingers had not worsened. The dry air was doing what no fire alone could, pulling the frost threat out of living tissue. Tom lay curled near the brazier, breathing slow and easy, the deep sleep of a body that had finally stopped fighting the cold. Alden sat propped against the salt, unable to rest, watching the flames as if they held a secret he had been too proud to learn.
How? How is it still? No draft, no frost, my breath doesn't mist. I've lived in these mountains 40 years and never felt air like this.
Raymond laid a hand on the nearest salt wall, his palm flat against the glittering white.
Salt pulls water out of the air. No moisture, no rot, no frost. The cold can't bite what it can't wet.
Alden's eyes moved over the glittering walls, the straight flame, the dry pallets, the simple arithmetic of a truth he had refused to see.
We called you a fool.
You were cold, so was I.
2 more days the blizzard howled above, but the glass thermometer in its salt niche never dipped below a steady, mild chill. Alden crouched beside it, watching the unmoving line, the same reading hour after hour, while the world above froze solid.
The earth down here never freezes. Year-round, it holds the temperature of deep stone. The salt keeps it so dry the cold can't bite.
He scraped a palmful of salt from the wall and let it fall in a dry white stream, bone dust that had not known water in 10,000 years.
My fingers, they're not healing fast, but they've stopped dying. The air in here won't let the frost spread.
The dried meat hung unrotted on its hooks. The blankets stayed crisp and dry, and not one candle flame wavered in the absolute stillness.
You could winter an army in here, just like you always said.
Raymond added another block to the brazier, and the group drew together in a circle of warmth that the blizzard outside could not find. The salt rat had built the best shelter in the valley, and now every soul in that pocket of dry, preserving air knew it. Outside, the storm still screamed against the mountain, but inside, the mine held its ancient, dry stillness, untouchable. On the 3rd morning, the roar above softened, and Raymond knew the blizzard had spent its fury at last. They dug through the drift with salvaged picks, raw hands, and when the last snow fell away, a blinding white world stared back. The valley was a buried dream. Rooftops like white waves, the town scarce a shadow under the glare. Together, they trudged toward it, a line of survivors who had outlasted the storm in a salt-walled pocket of stillness. Other souls crawled from basements, gaunt and blinking, staring at the unbroken faces of Alden and Marge. No one spoke their thanks aloud, but the silence carried a different weight now, gratitude heavy as sun on fresh snow. Raymond walked them to the town's edge, where the first shovel scraped. Then he stopped.
This is your home. Mine's down there.
He turned without waiting for reply, the dog already rising, and started back toward the dark mouth of the salt mine. Behind him, the town stood silent in the sun, and the salt rat walked into his warm, dry kingdom. The mine mouth swallowed him into its ancient dark, and the chill of moving air died in an instant. He felt the dry air close around him, a familiar weight that asked nothing and held everything. He straightened the hide curtain, added fuel to the brazier, and lit the wick with a hand that no longer trembled. The dog circled her blanket twice, sighed into the wool, and shut her eyes. Snow began to fall again outside, a soft hiss against the rock, but the mine did not care.
They called me Salt Rat. Now, I am the only one who knows where to sit out a blizzard without freezing.
He leaned back against a salt pillar, the journal open on his knee, the pen not moving. There was nothing left to prove. The lamp burned without a flicker. The walls held their dry white shine, and the silence was not empty. It was full of belonging. The winter had given him exactly what the town had tried to take, a place where the cold and the jeering could not reach. The salt rat had come home. When the melt came, the valley wore its scars like old rope burns, roofless cabins, frozen cattle, the silence of empty chairs. But no one froze that winter after the storm. People whispered the reason, and the reason had a name.
Raymond found a salt mine that breathes like a desert. Warm, dry, no frost. It's not luck, it's the stone itself.
He's still down there, comes up with salt and furs when he needs flour. No longer a rat, more like a neighbor.
On market days, Raymond walked up from the mine, his dog older but still at his heel, a sack of dry salt over his shoulder. People nodded now. A boy once brought him nails for his trade blanket. No one called him Salt Rat to his face. The children would stare at the mine entrance from the ridge, wondering what world of white crystal lay beneath the snow. And the old foreman, Alden, now grayer, would sometimes say, "If winter calls, you listen to the salt man." Raymond remained below, his brazier always lit, the dry walls always still, the storm a story others would tell. And in that deep, dry pocket, the Salt Rat had built a legend, one breath of still air at a time. The years passed above like weather, but the salt changed nothing. Raymond's beard grew whiter, his shoulders a little heavier. The brazier still glowed, the hide still hung still. The dog still slept with her nose toward the warmth. On the walls, a million salt crystals caught the firelight like a frozen starfield. Forever dry, forever bright. Outside, a winter wind began its old howl against the mountain, but inside, the air held its breath and did not stir. Raymond closed his journal, the pen dry, the pages unwarped by any damp. He had nothing more to write.
They named me for salt, but salt was the only thing that never turned its back.
He leaned forward and fed the brazier another block, its flame rising straight as a prayer in the absolute stillness. The dog sighed, her old bones settling deeper into the blanket, a sound that meant she was exactly where she wanted to be. The mine was not a tomb. It was a pocket of life the cold could not touch, and Raymond had become its living heart. And in that dry, warm silence, winter never won.